There's a moment every driver dreads. You're cruising along. Everything feels smooth, the engine humming like a quiet conversation beneath the hood, and then something changes. It's subtle at first. A hesitation, a slight shudder, maybe a sound that doesn't quite belong. You brush it off. But deep down, you know your car is trying to tell you something. And that something could be an engine misfire. Now here's the interesting part. Most people think a misfire is dramatic, obvious, impossible to ignore. But in reality, it often starts quietly, almost politely, like a whisper before it becomes a warning. And if you don't understand the signs, you might miss it entirely until it turns into a much bigger problem. So let's slow things down and really understand what's happening here. Not just the symptoms, but the story your engine is trying to tell you. At its core, your engine is all about rhythm. Precise, consistent, almost like music. Air and fuel mix together, ignite at just the right moment, and create the power that moves your car forward. It's a synchronized performance where every component plays its part perfectly. But when a misfire happens, that rhythm is broken. Imagine a drummer suddenly missing a beat in the middle of a song. Everything feels off. That's exactly what your engine experiences when one or more cylinders fail to ignite properly. The balance is disturbed, and the effects ripple through the entire system. One of the first signs people notice is a rough idle. You're stopped at a light, your foot resting lightly on the brake, and instead of a steady hum, the car feels like it's trembling. Not violently, but enough to make you wonder if something isn't quite right. It's easy to ignore, especially if it comes and goes. But that subtle vibration is often your engine struggling to maintain its rhythm. Then there's the hesitation. You press the accelerator, expecting a smooth surge of power, but instead, there's a delay, a pause. The car seems to think about it before responding. Sometimes it feels like a slight stumble, like the engine briefly loses its footing before catching itself again. That hesitation is one of the clearest signs that something inside the combustion process isn't happening as it should. And then comes the sound. Engines speak in sound long before they fail in dramatic ways. A misfire can introduce a sputtering noise, uneven and irregular. It's not always loud, but it's different. If you know your car well, you'll recognize it immediately. It's the difference between a steady heartbeat and one that skips unpredictably. But here's where things get even more interesting. Sometimes, the symptoms aren't just about what you feel or hear. They're about what you notice over time. Fuel efficiency, for example, can quietly decline. You might find yourself visiting the fuel station more often, wondering why your usual routine doesn't stretch as far as it used to. That's because when a cylinder misfires, fuel isn't being burned efficiently. It's wasted, and that inefficiency shows up in your mileage. Another subtle clue can be a lack of power, especially when you need it most. Climbing a hill, merging onto a busy road, or carrying a heavier load might suddenly feel more difficult. The engine isn't delivering the performance you expect, and it leaves you with a sense that something is holding it back. Now, here's the part many drivers overlook. A misfire doesn't always stay consistent. It can come and go. One moment the car feels perfectly fine, and the next, the symptoms return. This inconsistency can make it even more confusing, leading people to dismiss the issue as temporary or insignificant. But intermittent problems are often the most deceptive, because while the symptoms may fade, the underlying issue remains. And over time, it can worsen. Midway through your drive, you might notice something else. A faint smell, not overpowering, but noticeable enough to catch your attention. It could be unburned fuel making its way through the exhaust system. It's another sign that the combustion process isn't working as it should. At this point, you might be wondering what actually causes a misfire. The answer isn't always simple, but it often comes down to a few key elements: spark, fuel, and air. If any of these are disrupted, even slightly, the entire process can falter. A worn spark plug, for instance, might fail to ignite the mixture properly. A clogged fuel injector could disrupt the flow of fuel. An issue with airflow, like a faulty sensor, might throw off the balance entirely. Each of these problems can lead to the same result, a misfire. And yet, the symptoms remain your first and most important clue. Let's pause here for a moment, because this is where things take a turn. Imagine you've been noticing these signs for a while. The rough idle, the hesitation, the occasional sputter. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to make you slightly uneasy. You tell yourself you'll look into it later. But what happens if you don't? Over time, a misfire can lead to more serious issues. Components that rely on smooth operation begin to experience extra stress. The catalytic converter, for example, can be affected by unburned fuel, potentially leading to costly repairs. The engine itself may suffer from increased wear, reducing its lifespan. This is where awareness becomes incredibly valuable, because catching a misfire early isn't just about fixing a small problem. It's about preventing a chain reaction of larger ones. Now let's talk about another symptom that often gets overlooked, the check engine light. It's easy to dismiss that little glow on your dashboard, especially if the car seems to be driving fine. But in many cases, a misfire will trigger that warning. It's your car's way of saying, something isn't right. Please pay attention. Ignoring it might not cause immediate failure, but it does mean you're missing an opportunity to address the issue before it grows. There's also the emotional side of this experience. Driving is something we do almost automatically. It's part of our daily routine, something we rely on without thinking too much about it. So when something feels off, it creates a subtle sense of unease, a lack of confidence. You might find yourself listening more closely, paying attention to every little sound, wondering if it's getting worse. That feeling matters, because it's often your intuition picking up on changes before they become obvious. And here's something many people don't realize. Not all misfires feel the same. Some are barely noticeable, only showing up under certain conditions. Others are more pronounced, making the car feel unstable or sluggish. The variation depends on what's causing the issue and how severe it is. This is why it's so important to stay connected to how your car feels. You don't need to be an expert mechanic to recognize when something has changed. You just need to be attentive. Now, let's shift perspective for a moment. Think about your engine as a team working together. Each cylinder, each component, playing its role. When everything is functioning properly, the result is smooth, efficient performance. But when even one part starts to struggle, the entire system feels it. That's what a misfire really represents. Not just a single failure, but a disruption in harmony. And the symptoms we've been talking about are simply the ways that disruption makes itself known. As we move toward the final stretch, there's one more layer to consider. Time. A misfire rarely fixes itself. In most cases, it either stays the same or gradually gets worse. The longer it goes unaddressed, the more likely it is to lead to additional problems. But the good news is this. When caught early, many causes of misfires are relatively straightforward to fix. Replacing a worn component, cleaning a clogged part, or addressing a sensor issue can often restore the engine to its normal rhythm. It's a reminder that small actions, taken at the right time, can make a big difference. And now, let's bring it all together. The next time you're behind the wheel, take a moment to really listen. If you enjoy content that breaks things down in a simple, real-world way, consider subscribing so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you've ever experienced a misfire or noticed any of these symptoms yourself, share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else recognize the signs sooner. Because at the end of the day, awareness isn't just useful. It's powerful.